Oh my god, is Flaky a power scaler? Is it playing? No. No. I used to do versus debates here and there. But some people can get so stupid I genuinely start tweaking. However, as a result, I would say I've become pretty well versed in the art of combat debate. In fact, this video was originally gonna be a response video to 6's Itachi versus the 5 Kage Summit video, but I really don't want to dip my knees in versus debates again, in fear the tweak comes back. So instead, I thought of this. Fallacies are as they sound. They are arguments used in debates that are either dishonest or underhanded in certain areas, often trying to force or corner someone into agreeing with you instead of actually trying to trade numbers to see who's the most accurate. Surprisingly, there isn't a lot of videos talking about every fallacy in power scaling. In fact, the only one I could find was this video talking about just 5 of them, which, fun fact, there isn't 5, there is 50. Most of this should be common sense, but I've seen so many genuinely brain dead people on Twitter that I feel the need to go in depth on even the most basic of these fallacies. And I'm gonna be using Mario as a reference point for that, because that's some more fun! I'll be using Versus Battle Wiki as reference for it. If there are any more I'm missing, do let me know in the comments. Let's say I'm trying to debate with you who is faster, Mario or Pikachu. I try to tell you that Mario is faster than Pikachu because he has light level reaction. If your response to that is, Mario's not light speed because you are dumb, or there is no way you actually are smart enough to say that, congratulations, you are a user of the most overused and dumbest fallacy in all of debating, ad hominem. Ad hominem is when you try to devalue someone's points, not by disproving the points, but in trying to devalue the person. I cannot explain to you the amount of comments I would find on any video. Simply put, it does nothing for the debate. Properly, logically, disprove the notions first and foremost. Otherwise, a proper debate session will turn into a bitch contest in a matter of seconds. A better argument would have been something like, no, Mario shouldn't be because most of his showings are Mach speed and stuff like that. Hey man, I'm just saying, Mario can't throw a punch like Kratos can. What the heck? Kratos is not universal. Oh, look at that. Another fallacy. This fallacy is called the straw man. Straw man is when you take an argument and decide to completely exaggerate what is being said here, and as a result, completely ignore the entire point of the statement. Straw mans are usually hard to spot in a debate, but if you notice a weird leap in logic or an attempt to try twisting or corrupting your words, that is usually straw man tactics, and is a fallacy, as it doesn't properly try to address the argument you might be trying to make. Hey, I think Mario is universal. Wanna know why? Because nothing said he can't be. I love this one because it's the funniest argument I'll hear out of people sometimes. Burden of proof is when you make a statement and claim it's true by saying there's a lack of evidence to prove it false. This becomes a fallacy because you don't have proof that it's true anyway, so it cancels itself out. Funniest thing, I see this argument with Sonic.exes a lot. Prove to me that he isn't universal without giving proof that he is universal. You really can't argue it's stupid, can you? Appeal to motive is when you once again try to disprove sentiments, not by devaluing a statement, but by devaluing a person instead. However, instead of throwing an insult, you just question their motives. This happens a whole lot in the Mario vs Sonic debates I see, where instead of trying to debate points out, you might hear a conversation go like, Sonic is so much faster than Mario, and Mario doesn't have ways to counter super form when his star runs out. Wow, this does nothing. It actually does nothing. What did you prove in saying that? Nothing was disproven in saying that. Appeal to popularity. I love this one, because this is literally everyone. How many polls have you seen of who would win in a fight and the poll always goes to the more popular character? Unfortunately, saying that one character is more successful than another is not a power statement. Crazy, right? This applies for general sentiments too. Just because the general public agrees that one character should win doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct and that it's a valid argument that you can use. Everything needs to be based on logic when it comes to debates. Mario should be stronger than Link because Mario characters are stronger than Zelda characters. You can see where the problem is, right? Circular reasoning is when your assumed argument is based on another assumed argument. Both of these are statements without proof provided, but because the second statement is acting as proof for the first, you are made to think that the sentiment is true. But you cannot make an argument like this unless you have proven that argument beforehand. Otherwise, it's circular reasoning. Non-sequitur. Non-sequitur is when you use a fact as proof of something that just doesn't pertain to the argument. If I told you that Mario can jump really high, and then say because of that he's building level strength, you might think I'm an actual idiot, and I would be. A similar argument would be Goku can create after images and is therefore speed of light. Just because there's some loose connection to the argument does not mean the argument is suddenly proven. They would either require more explanation or it just doesn't work. Red. This is when you try to rebuttal against a statement with a point completely unrelated to that statement. Mario has to be faster in light because he can dodge lightning from Cackletta. Okay, yeah, but he never actually beat Cackletta on his own. Both statements are technically true, but statement 2 does not rebuke statement 1. Association fallacy. Mario is able to lift a building, so a Toad should be able to as well. Association fallacy is when you argue that a feat is possible because of a connection a person may have to another character with that feat. A simple connection is not enough of an argument to suggest this. You might have seen me use this fallacy in my 106 Kakashi video here and there, in fact. Argument from ignorance. This is a little bit tricky. It's similar to burden of proof in that you make a statement based on a lack of evidence. There has never been proof of anyone being faster than the Flash. He has to be the fastest person in all media. This can be troublesome, as you can say something like this but still not be a fallacy. If you said there has never been proof of anyone being faster than the Flash, so he might be the fastest in all media, wouldn't be a fallacy, as you're just connecting a sentiment instead of trying to make a cold hard fact. But this is a jump in logic. Argument from incredulity. I think I'm saying that correctly. This is an argument similar to ignorance, but instead of it being based on a lack of evidence, it's much rather not being able to believe presented evidence. Basically something like, nah, he's not that strong. That don't feel right, so he can't be that strong. It's clear to see why this argument doesn't work. It's not based in facts, but on personal emotion. It doesn't qualify as a debunking point just because you feel like something isn't right. Argument from belief. This is the flip side of argument from incredulity, where instead of choosing not to believe in presented evidence, you present your own belief as the proof. Mario's light speed because I said so. It's the same reason of argument from incredulity why this doesn't count as a discernible fact. It's your opinion, not an actual statement. Appeal to emotion. Another emotion-based fallacy. But appeal to emotion is basically when you try to use emotional tactics to force your opponent to think your way. Come on, you're a smart guy, you know I'm right. Or, of course Mario can dodge bullets. He wouldn't really be a cartoon hero if he could, you know. This is based off some sort of sentimental argument. Neither statement is proof. One is flattery and the other is wishful thinking. Appeal to tradition. This is when you try to argue that one character can beat another character because that's just how it has to be. Goku would solo all of Mario's friends. What makes you think Mario could beat him? You're trying to argue that because one way has to be true, the other way must be as well. One thing can be true on its own, but doesn't necessarily have to be true for others. The arguments can work in reverse too. Sonic always beats Hercule, so he definitely can beat Goku. Equivocation. This is the One Punch Man argument. This is the argument that basically says if you can interpret something this way, that way has to be true. The strongest version of this argument is Saitama would literally beat everyone because he can beat everyone in one punch, simply based on the fact that he's called One Punch Man. Similar arguments are Sonic is only speed as sound because Sonic means sound, or Vegeta's Big Bang attack has to be universal because the Big Bang created the universe. No limits fallacy. No limits fallacy is essentially this ability hasn't shown a limit, so there isn't one. There's no way to prove an ability with no known limit even has a limit. Examples are, Sonic has infinite speed because we have never seen his speed get pushed to the limit. Itachi said that only a Mangekyo Sharingan can beat him. That means every universe would lose because no one has that. Everything has an explanation and everything should have a limit unless stated otherwise. Undisturbed Middle. This is when you misuse the transitive property. If feat A implies feat B and feat B implies feat C, then feat C should imply feat A. This is very similar to how all thumbs are fingers but not all fingers are thumbs. Just because every thumb is a finger doesn't mean the reverse is true. Not all fingers are gonna be thumbs. Similarly, if you make a statement like every omnipotent being is a god, then the Sage of Six Paths is omnipotent, this is undistributed middle. Fallacy Fallacy. Fallacy Fallacy is a warning to anyone who uses this list to their advantage. These fallacies are there to be called out so that when your opponent uses said fallacy, that they can rethink their strategy. You cannot, by any means, use the fact that they are using a fallacy to imply that you are right in this debate. Just like your opponent, you need to apply logic too. You can't cheap it by exclaiming, minor spelling mistake, I win. Argument from anecdotal evidence. This is when you try to imply your proof by telling a story that can't be confirmed or denied. Because we can't prove your evidence in this story, we won't agree with you as a result. Biggest argument often used is with Madara versus Itachi, where people will randomly say, Kishimoto once said that he had to kill Itachi because he would have beaten Madara. There is no proof that he has said that to anybody, and you can't use that as an argument. Proof by example. Basically, this is when you do provide proof of something, but then use that proof to speak generally. Reverse Flash can't be that fast because he's been tagged by Batman who's slow. Therefore, anyone of Batman's speed is enough to hurt Reverse Flash. This statement ignores the possibility of this being a statistical anomaly and not held true all the time. You need to prove that your example is not an anomaly and there's a clear, discerning explanation or proof to these things. You'll see this argument be used all the time with Toon Force characters like Bugs Bunny or even Mario, where because they'll have moments where something as simple as a hammer is able to destroy them, apparently completely rebukes all the times they have been so above those leagues, you have to naturally assume these characters are at their best. Affirming the consequence. This happens when you use a premise to prove a conclusion, when you're supposed to use a conclusion to prove the premise. People who can jump 100 meters in the air should have building level strength in their legs. Since Mario has done that before, he has to be building level. Simply saying a statement like this should come with proof that it works like this in the Mario world. Denying the antecedent. This is the opposite of affirming the consequence, where you use a premise to prove a conclusion and use that to say they don't follow this premise, therefore they don't follow this conclusion. They are both quite similar to non-sequiturs. Bias sample. Bias sample is similar to appeal to popularity, except you use some well-known person's thought about a fight as proof of who would win. The Mario example of this is Mario would beat Sonic in a fight because Death Battle says so. Death Battle is not the only source, and one could argue that they have a bias against Sonic due to how many Death Battles the franchise have lost. Like it's been repeated time and again in this video, you have to prove your own proof and research, and not to rely on sentiments or bias samples to work with. This could be more finicky too. Say you have a vote for who's in agreement on durability, Mario or Sonic. If this vote was done in a Sonic specific YouTube channel, of course Sonic would get the winning agreements and vice versa. Half-truth. This is when someone provides proof and evidence but leaves out crucial information to prove their points. Consider this a lie of omission, where you say something like, Mario was able to beat Culex, therefore Culex can be beaten by anyone on Mario's level. This is a half-truth, as beating Culex didn't just take Mario, it took 2 other people to do it, maybe 5 totally if you're looking at a more lore perspective of it. Hasty generalization. This can overlap with proof by example. A lot of these fallacies can overlap actually, where you don't get enough evidence to prove the conclusion you're trying to make. Mario has been beaten by regular enemies, therefore even a Toad can beat Mario in a fight. This ignores all the times where this wasn't true, and is a hastily made conclusion. Misleading vividness. This is almost exactly proof by example, but instead of just giving the example, they just give a lot of detail to the example. So back to my original proof by example, Reverse Flash isn't fast. He's been tagged by Batman, who is able to stab him in the foot, so anyone of Batman's speed can tag him. The details don't prove anything, but it's there to try and convince you. Package deal. People think this is transitive property again, but it isn't. A is true, A is associated with B, so B is true. Mario can move faster in light and ergo can travel through time. Because going faster in light and time travel are tied, one can make this argument, but you have no idea how time travel works in the Mario world, and there's no proof of this. False dichotomy. This is when you say that given some options, only one is true to prove your point. When Bowser shot a fireball at Mario, Mario had 2 options. Either he was fast enough to jump out of the way, or block it. This doesn't work as it removes the possibility of other options. Namely, what if Mario saw Bowser build up for the attack and just prepared his defenses beforehand? False dichotomy forces you to think a certain way without keeping an open mind to other potential openings. Correlation implies causation. Event A is associated with event B. Therefore, event A causes event B. When Mario is in the dream world and he fused with Luigi, Mario's stat is the combination of his and Luigi. Therefore, anyone who fuses with Mario in the dream dimension will give Mario a similar buff. This leaves out the possibility that's different other times, like how Phantasma enters Mario, but doesn't give Mario any of his stats. Post hoc. Post hoc is when you believe that because 2 events happen one right after the other, that the event had to have been caused by the other. So for a dumb example, Mario had no sleeves when he beat Shadow Mario. Therefore, Mario having no sleeves gave him enough power to beat him. The counter argument to post hoc is that it ignores any other explanation for Mario being able to win. In this case, poisoning the well. Similar to ad hominem, but instead of trying to insult your opponent directly, you devalue him in front of the audience or judges and try to make him appear invalid for the argument. Your Honor, my opponent is a stinky Sonic fan. He won't speak the Mario name correctly and will say Sonic beats Mario. He shouldn't be trusted. Obviously, the only truly stinky person is you. Fallacy of Accident. Somebody tells you a general rule to justify something when there could exist exceptions or the rule itself is an exception. In a fight, the faster character usually wins. Mario can move faster than Sonic by using a warp pipe, therefore he will win. Not only is the faster character thing come with possible exceptions, warp pipe is a unique exception too that counts as teleportation, and can't actually count in a speed debate.
Ooh.
This is a variation of ad hominem, where an argument gets dismissed by devaluing the person's practices rather than their arguments. Mario has never stated to be able to jump over 100 blocks. That's a lie. Well, you lied when you said Sonic was stated to outrun a black hole. You need to give proof. Discrediting the person in question doesn't add or help your case. Loaded question. This is when a person gives you a rhetorical gotcha question that makes it regardless of a yes or no answer, you won't win. Are you still making that stupid claim? Saying yes admits that it's a stupid claim. Saying no admits that it's a stupid claim. Fallacy of Composition. Basically, if a person say that A is true, then anything larger than A is also true. Mario can beat Pikachu, therefore he can beat the entire Pokemon verse. Argumentum ad Verbosium. This is when someone tries to prove their claim by sending what's essentially a twit longer, but said twit longer is repetitive and doesn't come with any strong evidence. The purpose of this is usually to try and exhaust your opponent with constant yapping, constant beating around the bush. Figure of speech is when you take a saying or figure of speech literally, like when there exists a statement like Mario's reaction is godlike, therefore he is a god. Godlike is often used as hyperbole or simply as a hype statement. Unless made clear, it doesn't usually mean that Mario has reactions of a proper god. Argumentum ad nauseum is probably the most toxic one, where in spite of how many times you argue against someone's point, they just keep saying the same exact point as an argument with the intent to make you give up and concede out of sheer annoyance. I don't even want to give an example for this one. Golden mean fallacy. This is the idea that when given two opposing viewpoints, that the correct viewpoint is somewhere in between. Essentially, it's when you make the argument of I think Mario beats Pea Shooter, you think Pea Shooter beats Mario. That must mean they are probably equal. This doesn't give credence to the possibility that one of these viewpoints is just not correct. Style over substance. This is the argument you give where you personally think one is stronger than the other just from how much more spectacle there is to them. This is very common, and it's a pretty popular reason why so many characters would be thrown into versus debates just because of their flashy new style. It's like saying Sonic has after images and blurs whenever he moves, Mario doesn't, therefore Sonic has to be faster. Visual is artist's interpretation, a style. Just because one thing is drawn a certain way unlike another, doesn't mean it's not of this certain way. False analogy. This is when you try to argue a point using an analogy, but the analogy doesn't work. It's like saying Mario versus Flash is the same as trying to swat a fly. Yeah, the fly is fast and hard to get, but you'll eventually get them. It goes without saying that a fly is far, far weaker than a person, which may not apply to this debate whatsoever. Analogies need to be more on the nose than this. Faulty premise. This is similar to affirming the consequence, but this time, instead of using an honest premise that can be possible, the premise is just wrong. If you're able to make rocks fly upwards just by powering up, then that must mean gravity manipulation is at play. What answer does Mario have to Goku's manipulating gravity? This premise just doesn't make any sense, as there could be other explanations to this effect, and this current explanation is also on its own not making sense. Genetic fallacy. This is when you say, this isn't your argument, so I won't counter it. That does not matter. An argument is still an argument, and you need to counter it as a result. Just because a person says, you got this calculation from a website, I'm not countering copied work. Make your own conclusions next time. This is completely ignorant, as this doesn't at all try to deny the point, just the person making the point. Incomplete comparison. This is when you try to make a vague claim in hopes of it being a valid argument. You'll hear this time and again, and people say things like, but Sonic's really fast, or but Goku's really strong. But it questions, to what standards are you saying this? To what extent do you mean? Who are you comparing any character to when you're making this claim? Yeah, Goku is pretty strong next to Yamcha, but he doesn't look that strong next to Grandmaster Zeno. Inconsistent comparison. This is when you try to prove your points by comparing a person's feats to multiple other characters. This only works if these comparisons are meaningful. For example, if I was to say something like, Mario would beat any Sonic character. He's faster than Vector, smarter than Sonic, stronger than Espio. yeah, these comparisons might be true, but they aren't actually that special. These would have more meaning if the conclusions I drew was he's faster than Sonic, smarter than Eggman, stronger than Knuckles, because these are high tiers of their stat. It would matter a lot more here. It's much more consistent. Invalid proof. Invalid proof, aside from meaning this proof is wrong, is more commonly when you provide calculations for some power, but you did the math wrong. If I said to you that Mario has scalings to show that he's 10 times stronger than an atomic nuke, and then gives you the math and it shows 10 times weaker. I think the most memed version of this was in Death Battle's first Goku vs Superman, where they blatantly got wrong the math they used for their scalings on Goku. This was clowned on in the power scaling community. Even Kid Me was looking at this and was a little confused. Affirming a disjunct. This is when you say there can only be two possibilities. One is true and the other is false, ignoring the possibility that they are both true or both false. Either Mario has great arm strength or great leg strength. We have seen him jump high, so he has to have great leg strength. Right. Existential fallacy. This is when your argument hinges on something's existence when it doesn't exist. If Mario gets stronger with each power-up star up until 150, then Mario with 200 stars would be even stronger. Here's the thing though, you might be right. Might not, but there is no game where Mario can get 200 stars. Fallacy of exclusive premise. This is when someone gives you two negative premises and tries to associate them. No Mario character can jump fast. Some Mario characters cannot dodge, so that means Mario characters that can jump fast can't dodge. There's no real association to be had here. One isn't proven by the other. And my favorite, appeal to reality fallacy. Have you ever heard or used this argument? This character can't be faster than light because nothing is faster than light. It literally takes infinite energy and it's the speed limit. He has to be moving either near light speed or at it. This is appeal to reality fallacy, where because of how things work in our reality, you presume they work the same way in any written reality, which is obviously not true. You have no clue whether the world that was written is a world that allows passing of the speed limit, hence it's not an argument that can be used. Only certain things like simple mathematical concepts can stay, largely due to how self-explanatory it is. Yes, force is how hard something is hitting you. This is everything I know. You can check the wiki itself if you want to get its explanations on things. These are how I interpret each and every fallacy. Now, for all versus debate fiends out there, have fun and subscribe.